There's a massive shift happening in global medicine right now. The life-saving research we call clinical trials, well, it's expanding to brand new frontiers. Today, we're going to dive into what that actually means on the ground. We're going to look at a country like Nepal to understand both the incredible promise and the really serious challenges. For decades, if you thought about a big clinical trial, you were probably picturing a lab in Europe or North America. But that's not the case anymore. Over the last 10 years or so, the entire industry has gone global, outsourcing some of the most vital research to developing nations all over the world. So, why the big move? Well, it really boils down to a few key reasons. First, developing nations offer access to way larger and more diverse groups of people, which is absolutely crucial for good science. You also get access to what are called treatment-naive patients, basically people who haven't taken other medicines that could mess with the results. And, let's be honest, on a practical level, it's just more cost-effective, and there's a growing pool of talented, trained professionals right there, ready to do the work.
To really see how this all plays out in the real world, we're going to zoom in on one country that's becoming a new hub for this kind of research, Nepal. Its growing health research sector is a fascinating case study for what can go right and, what can go very, very wrong.
As Nepal starts to build up its research infrastructure, it's hitting some pretty predictable growing pains. The country now has to navigate all the same ethical traps that have led to some really serious problems in other developing nations. Getting this right from the very beginning is everything.
And believe me, the stakes could not be higher. Audits in other regions have turned up some truly shocking stuff. Trials running without any ethics approval at all, patients being enrolled without ever giving their consent, and even researchers completely making up their data. And look, these aren't just little slip-ups. They are fundamental breaches of trust and human safety. Okay, so what does this actually look like day to day? What are the real, on-the-ground hurdles, both the practical stuff and the big ethical questions that research teams are facing in places with limited resources? When things do go wrong, the chaos tends to fall into four main buckets. You've got personnel issues, frustrating regulatory delays, major problems with getting patients to sign up and give consent, and, of course, critical logistical failures. Any single one of these can put the integrity of an entire study at risk. So, for instance, you might have doctors who are already completely overworked and just don't want to participate. That, of course, leads to painfully slow patient recruitment, which puts a ton of pressure on the team. Then, maybe the approvals from the ethics boards get stuck in limbo, the paperwork becomes a total mess, and sometimes patients just vanish. They're lost to follow-up, and you can't complete the study. Now, at the very heart of all this is one crucial idea: informed consent. And let's be clear, this is not just about getting a signature on a form. It's a whole process. It means a person has to voluntarily agree to be in a study after they've been given all the information that could possibly affect their decision. This is the absolute, non-negotiable cornerstone of all ethical research. But, getting that consent isn't always so simple. I mean, in a normal situation, a patient has plenty of time to read everything, ask questions, and really think it over. But what happens in a chaotic emergency room? If a patient is unconscious and the research is super time-sensitive, you need special procedures, like getting consent from their next of kin, or even deferring it until the patient can decide for themselves. It gets complicated. And then, beyond consent, you've got the logistical nightmares. The special drugs being tested could be stored at the wrong temperature, making them totally useless. Team members might not be trained on the complex computer systems used to randomize patients. And data security can be a huge, huge problem. We're talking unprotected computers, or even patient files just sitting in unlocked cabinets. Any one of these mistakes can make the whole study invalid.
Okay, so we've laid out a lot of problems, but what's the solution? Well, the good news is there's a really clear blueprint for how to build a research system that is both ethical and effective.
It all boils down to 5 core obligations that every single research team has to live by. Number 1, you have to develop a rock-solid plan or a protocol. 2, you get full ethics approval before you even think about enrolling a single person. 3, you recruit and keep participants in the study ethically. 4, you manage all the data with extreme accuracy and security. And finally, number 5, you archive all your documents for the long haul. So if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, building a strong research system really rests on 3 main pillars. First, you need well-trained teams on the ground, your investigators, coordinators, and nurses. Second, you need strong national oversight, like the Nepal Health Research Council, to set the rules and make sure everyone follows them. And third, you need total transparency, like making sure every single trial is registered publicly before it even begins.
So how do you actually create that accountability? Well, it comes down to a few key things. Having research teams that are dedicated just to the study helps prevent mistakes and makes it easier to find participants. Having strict regulatory guidelines makes sure everyone is playing by the same ethical rulebook. And doing regular audits and monitoring acts as a crucial safety net, protecting patients and making sure that data is solid.
All right, let's bring this all home. Why does getting all of this right in a place like Nepal matter so much? It's all about connecting this local, on-the-ground research to better health outcomes for every single one of us, all around the world.
5 to 25 years. Now, that's not just some random number. That is how long international guidelines say you have to keep or archive all the study documents after a clinical trial is finished. Not for a few months, for up to a quarter of a century.
And this requirement, it isn't just about finding storage space. It's a really powerful symbol. It shows that the responsibility a researcher has to a patient and to the science itself doesn't just end when the study is over. It is a deep, long-term commitment. And that leaves all of us with a really critical question for the future. As medicine becomes truly global, and as it reaches more diverse people than ever before, how do we make absolutely sure that our ethics and our systems for protecting people can actually keep pace?